everyone, welcome back. This is S.C. Coleman, author, and in this video we're going to be talking about the popular subject today, which few people seem to actually be doing any factual or truthful or even useful reporting on or providing of information. And those, of course, are the files recently released. And in order to start this, we're going to go ahead and get an overview from the documents themselves, specifically a memorandum discussing a manuscript by a David Phillips. This is a book which seemed to cause a stir among that particular organization, about which the documents were, or by whom the documents were made. And instead of reading the entire thing, I'll only highlight, as far as I can tell, the more applicable components. Under Chapter 2, Guatemala, states the book confirms the CIA's role with Colonel Armas and the coup, as well as a coup in Iran. And of course, when they're talking about a coup, using the French word strike, what they're really talking about and avoiding saying is a insurrection, or another word for it would be well, you know, most people understand. I can't think of the word right now, but, you know, it's basically when you put a puppet in the position of a government role. Now, most people, I would say, in the United States at least, would be fine with the CIA as being well known as putting puppets in position in foreign countries. I'm sure a lot wouldn't be. But that takes on a completely different role, as we'll see, when that is what they're doing in the United States. Allegedly the country that they're supposed to defend and protect and all this other nonsense. Which is, as we'll find out, simply a cover of one of their many for a different type of operation and mission. Also, there's a confirmation of false identity papers in the United States, and a capability to alter FBI criminal records. I'm sure most of us are aware that these things happen, but here we're getting direct confirmation, evidentiary proof from the proverbial horse's mouth. Now, this section talks about a Gulf Steamship Company, and the real name of that being the Gibraltar Steamship Company. And that's just one element of fraudulent corporate control and money laundering, as well as other heinous activities. Essentially speaking, using the identity and the reputation of the United States of America and the people that live here as their cover, which is an interesting concept. Next, we have a footnote confirming a CIA role in the Glomar Explorer, which GSA, as according to this document from the 70s, is now trying to rent or sell the ship. Several offices objected to references to the assassination of President Kennedy and the Watergate affair. These were rather innocuous and could probably not be justified on legal grounds. Of course, in this context, I don't know how they're using the word legal, because they like to use it in multiple fashions and pretend it means something else. 2 cables sent to Santiago detailing the overthrow of Allende, which actually I believe that would be Allende, but most people say Allende. Agency judgments on evaluation regarding the conduct and success of the investigative efforts, as well as other personalities critical of the agency. So that's just evidentiary proof of what we already knew, which is that they attempt to silence and remove anyone who is, as they say, critical of the agency. And then this identifies Camp Perry as a CIA training establishment, discusses training cover and Department of Defense cover. That's a big one right there. The reason why I say that's a big one as the Department of Defense cover is because of current publications, specifically a document clearly fabricated in a university system, talking about DoD law enforcement. And I did a video about that before. Central Cover staff asserts that while the CIA auspices of Camp Perry has been alleged in the press, the agency has never confirmed it as fact. And auspice is another word for office. Or, in many other contexts, cover. Because when you work in the auspices of something, you're working under the office of something or in the name of that thing. Now, some other interesting notes is we have pseudonym John F. Rittenhouse. Now, the reason why that's a big deal is because, of course, if, somebody's been living under a rock or is foreign, then they wouldn't have very much information about the caricature Kyle Rittenhouse. Next, we have subsidizing, producing, and distributing El Campesino's book, Life and Death in the USR. And, of course, this is something that we all know, but we're going to find out is mentioned a lot in these documents about CIA involvement in inflating books, authors, various types of famous people, all kinds of things. And the other thing about it is that there is so much damning and incriminating evidence and information specifically relating to overt treason in the United States and activities directly against the people and the country and the nation as a whole, that the only reason why people are not reporting on this is because they don't want to. And they don't want to go, of course, through the tedious effort of filtering through all the documents. And as we'll see later in this, I have in fact confirmed many of these documents to be absolutely and completely true because of continuing ongoing operations and suspicious patterns and elements that are confirmed by these documents as well. Also, page 66, beginning with finis, or finis, which is a word for finish in different language, ending with world on line 27. This passage describes a specific CIA operation which resulted in the production and distribution of an animated cartoon based on George Orwell's Animal Farm. And that might not be as applicable to most people today because Animal Farm maybe is less, they don't really like people talking or reading or doing anything around that book. They'd rather people focus on that absolutely tedious and boring 1984. Agency's role in the translation, publishing, and distribution of Eudocio Ravina's book, The Yan'an Way. Yan'an Way, yeah. Also describes William Buckley's role in the operation as a CIA officer. That's another person. And the next, we've got cover arrangement with the movie industry. Has been very effective in Southeast Asia, and such cover is still being used in other areas. I mean, we all knew about that, but here it's sort of overt confirmation. Forgery of a page of the Shanghai Post. Now, that's something that people probably don't think about a lot, and I didn't think about until I read it, which is that the CIA actively forges articles and news pieces, so-called, in the name of rival outfits or just in the name of anyone in general. They just, make crap up. And so because of this, you have to wonder how many publications were attributed to somebody but were actually forgeries. They were not made by that institution itself. So that's an interesting idea. And then in this section, page 95, beginning with Hong Kong, and line 16 through branch and line 19. This should be deleted because it describes an operation conducted jointly with the liaison service in Hong Kong, targeted against mainland China, and as such is not only damaging to current American detente efforts, but is particularly menacing to Hong Kong authorities in view of their proximity and susceptibility to potential Chinese retaliatory pressures. And I would expect that those Chinese retaliatory pressures possibly could be the reason for all of the free Hong Kong activities and other nonsense going on in 2020. Also, this mentions monitoring of 42 telephone lines in Uruguay. Now, if the CIA is going to monitor that many, then imagine a different scenario where they're provided with the full capabilities of the National Security Agency, as we all know, who is tapping on absolutely everyone. And they would have no trouble about doing that because these individuals believe themselves to be able to get away with anything, of course, while the rest of us take the fall for it, and they can just blame the American public or the Imperial America, which I guarantee is a CIA talking point. Subsidization of publication of GILAS, D-J-I-L-A-S book, also refers to the agency news service located in Washington's National Press Building. And then there's a former Whitting contact who's now employed by the State Department, a Mrs. Marietta Borgin. And that's going to be a big deal because the State Department is essentially speaking just another CIA cover, as we'll find out. But also the State Department is absolutely filled with foreign operatives and foreign enemies, and is essentially speaking a foreign outfit controlled by foreign enemies. Set of documents which was not mentioned during the recent congressional Watergate hearings. That's going to be interesting, if you could find it. Now this one, marked priority, is it's from 14 June 1976, is a little bit more panicky in its wording about this particular book. It says the book wants to set the record straight and leads to ramifications of the activities of the agency. Now, here's an interesting phrase. There is no clear-cut assurance that he can achieve the same success as an author. Now, considering the way the CIA works and the way they word things, that sounds like they're actively planning to derail the publication. Of course, this has multiple reference to a Dr. Kissinger. That shouldn't be a surprise. But the big one on page 14, the information regarding the laundering of money as set forth in the first paragraphs of this page serves as a confirmation of official involvement in such activities. And we're going to see quite a bit of information about those types of activities. And Ernest Hemingway was a Havana chief of station. What a surprise. I never thought Ernest Hemingway was a very good author or writer, and shocker, his popularity came from CIA involvement. Station chief, no less. Next, we have agency printing counterfeit tax stamps. Don't think anyone's surprised by that. And just here's some more detailings of different things. Here's a big one that I mentioned before, of Camp Perry, with comments regarding firearms training, counterterrorism training, cover background establishment, and a whole bunch of other stuff. CIA involvement in a Chilean assassination. Surprising, not really. And then that's the end of that particular panicky letter right there. Now, in a different document, this details an individual born in April 16, 1921 in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and is an American citizen. Now, the big reason for that, and all of these documents that relate to the Netherlands, is because of the Wolters Kluwer Company, which effectively speaking controls the entire United States on behalf of enemy foreign interests in business filings. Big deal. Just did a video about that. He was a research analyst in historical division of the Department of the Army in October 47 to June 48, engaged in selection and formulation of reports on German documents which shed light on the West Europe campaign. So this is a Dutch person who's highly integrated into the Army and working with the CIA. Yeah. That's going to explain a whole bunch of other stuff later. An archivist in the Office of Military Government for Germany, Department of the Army, served as chief of document library, collected reports, dispatches, cables, etc., and developed an index system. That's 46 to 47. And then 45, well, January 45 to August 45. Assistant to Food and Agriculture Officer with Military Government Section of Headquarters 12th Army Group. Duties consisted mainly of availability and requirements studies connected with food needs of the German population. Talking about the same person, this will confirm Mr. Rose's verbal request that the contact division /CO asks his Boston office to arrange appointments for Mr. Edward Rose of Cover Division to see Mr. William Barron, a chairman of the board of Gillette Safety Razor Company, and Mr. John E. Tolman, senior vice president of the First National Bank of Boston. Now, the First National Bank of Boston is heavily involved in the corrupt filings of Form ADV, SEC, and a whole bunch of interconnected money operation systems that amount to treason, of course, but they're a particularly heinous outfit. And then this mentions Leo Chern's, a president of the Research Institute of America, was backstopping activities. And they mentioned one who is doing work for Leo has also been witting of the new leader. He will not identify himself with the agency. Levitas, which is a code name, is not witting of the fact that the boy is connected with the agency. And then, as I mentioned before, there's information on a Joseph D. Ardley, spelled Ardleigh, Executive Vice President of the Research Institute of America Incorporated, previously connected with the law firm of Milbank, Tweed, Hope, and Webb of New York. The Hoover Company of North Canton, Ohio, has his own business, which is known as Sales Methods Incorporated. So that Hoover Company of North Canton, Ohio, will find a trademark service mark application in the state of Ohio. This is dated 1990. It says that the date when the trademark or service mark was first used anywhere was August of 1908. And this section in the purpose, nope, that's not the purpose. The trademark service mark is briefly described as follows. As you can tell, it's been redacted. This document does not come from the recently distributed filings. This is a document from the Ohio Secretary of State's website with a section that's obviously been redacted. The apparent purpose are electrical apparatus and appliances, including suction cleaners for polishers, rug shampooers, clothes washers, and dryers. Trademark is applied or affixed to the goods and or their containers. Engineering of the Hoover Company. June 16th, 1990. H. Roger Clark. And I see a ridiculously large number of names as Clark on a lot of these similar filings. Hoover Company sales, November 15, 1996. Same street address as this one. Different entities though, which would be 101 East Maple Street, North Canton, Ohio. But it lists the CT Corporation system at 815 Superior Avenue, Northeast Cleveland. Now that is the same address, allegedly, for the Federal Immigration Court, so-called. And this lists sale of appliances and floor care products, including accessories and parts, but has nothing to do with electrical appliances. Hoover Company 1 LP, and the 1 is an I, so Hoover Company I LP, however you would like to say that, lists the CT Corporation system at a different address, 1300 East 9th Street, Cleveland, Ohio. But it also has this familiar address linked to it, 1209 Orange Street, Wilmington, Delaware. And also, of course, lists 101 East Maple Street, North Canton, Ohio. Now there's a merger, certificate of merger, between the Maytag Sales Company and the Hoover Company, Sales Company, which of course, as we know, are fronts for the CIA, of which at this point I'm not sure which companies aren't. Patricia J. Martin listed as the consolidating, whatever listing, a consolidating agreement, is listed at 403 West 4th Street North, Newton, Iowa. And lists the CT Corporation system at yet another different address. 36 East 7th Street, Suite 2400, Cincinnati, Ohio. The Patricia J. Martin is listed at route number 5, Ellsworth Avenue, Marietta, Washington County, Ohio. So, 2 addresses for the same person. And Patricia J. Martin is listed as the incorporator from May 12th, 1988 for, and this is for a different company, Patty's Parties Incorporated. Of course, if you think about the CIA cover, a company named Patty's Parties, I think has a pretty insidious idea to it. And here's another address for the same person, Patricia J. Martin at 2795 Francina Court, Brunswick, Ohio. This is for CNP Martin LLC, with the name of the current agent as Authority RA Incorporated. Now, when we look at the Professional Research Institute of America Incorporated, which, as you remember, the individuals detailed on that are the Research Institute of America. We have Hubco National Headquarters, 77 East John Street, Hicksville, New York. And of course, the Research Institute of America was listed as being in New York and from New York. And of course, that law firm, that individual with the CIA was in New York as well. So we have the Professional Research Institute of America Incorporated out of Worcester, Ashland, Ohio, which lists their purpose as consulting. And the date of this document, if I can find it, well, it doesn't have an effective date listed here. But this one, Peregree, is a registered trademark for Professional Research Institute of America, is dated March 28, 2011. A Robert Bernardini, listed at 1521 Township Road 35, Worcester, Ohio. And on the document filings itself, there's no mention of New York. That's simply the filing return address. Next, we have AFCO RIA Limited Partnership, RIA. This is from 1994, June 17th, and formed in Virginia, allegedly. CT Corporation System, 1300 East 9th Street, Cleveland. And it lists a 7600 Culture Drive, Suite 240, McLean, Virginia. And a Susan Smith Corporate Secretary is the one that filed it. Next we have Aviation Facilities Company Incorporated, Susan Smith, with a P.O. Box 16860, Washington, D.C., AFCO RIA Limited Partnership. And this AFCO RIA Limited Partnership has an entire section missing. But what's interesting about this is that with this document, AFCO RIA Partnership, the date is on the one listing the Washington, D.C. P.O. Box is 2013. Specifically September 30th. This other one says that it was registered to transact business in Ohio on December 30th of 1999. And then this document, which is missing the complete above half, which looks like somebody took a photo editor to it. They didn't, basically, this was not an error in scanning into a computer system. This was an intentional removal of the majority of this page right here. And the bottom half only lists that the purpose of the company is to lease, develop, and manage real property. Of course, you have to imagine whatever they specifically wanted to remove was probably pretty important. And then the other section has the same thing. And I wonder what it was, because most of these are just simple standard filings. Fill in the blank kind of thing. This list of Francis X. Chambers Jr. out of Virginia, Fairfax County, June 1994. That's a notary public. Now, here's a big one. CT Corporation System, CT System, RE AFCO RIA Incorporated, Council West Group Incorporated, 1600 Anderson Road, McLean, Virginia, 2020, 22102. Now, the big thing here, CT Corporation System, 1025 Vermont Avenue, northwest or northeast, something, or west, I don't know. I can't read that very well. I think it's northwest. Washington, D.C. That's not much of a surprise, but that's the first document I've seen anyway. I don't know about the only, which lists the CT Corporation System at a Washington, D.C. address. And next we have AFCO RIA listing CT Corporation System at 815 Superior Avenue, Northeast, Cleveland. And the West Group Incorporated, again, with a Kathy Frank, or Franke. Next we have AG RIA LLC, which is listed purpose, and this is from October 18, 2023, is listed of purpose as registration with the SEC. So basically that company exists for the only purpose of registering with the SEC. And this is AG RIA LLC. Christopher W. Conan is listed as the agent in Cincinnati, Ohio. But under the signature section, where you would normally find, a signature, it says Ackerman Group. Next, we have RIA LLC with a Pulcinelli as the return address on the receipt at 900 West 48th Place, Suite 900, Kansas City, Missouri. This says RIA Health PC, United States Corporation Agents Incorporated, Registered Agents Incorporated at a 6454 Market Avenue North, Suite 100, North Canton, Ohio. RIA Health PC, Amale, A-M-A-L-E, Knox, K-N-O-X, at 330 Harrison Street, Pontiac, Michigan. This is also for RIA Health PC and with the effective date of 11/08/2018 with United States Corporation Agents, Fairlawn, Ohio. It's listed as the address. RIA Health PC, 1049 Market Street, Suite 603, San Francisco, California. Brief summary of the corporate purpose to be exercised within Ohio says RIA Health PC helps people stop or reduce their drinking. Get convenient medical management through video appointments on your smartphone, plus coaching support and private at-home measurement through our secure app for affordable monthly fee. RIA Health clinical services are provided by physicians employed by RIA Health PC, a California professional corporation. RIA Health PC contracts with DXRX, a management services organization, MSO, to provide administrative and other services. DXRX Incorporated, jurisdiction California, and that is a subsidiary of RIA Technology Management Incorporated. Lists the Corporation Trust Center at 1209 Orange Street, Wilmington, Delaware. Surprise, surprise. Also 6545 Market Avenue North, Suite 100, North Canton, Ohio, and the purpose of that subsidiary of RIA Technology Management Incorporated, DXRX Incorporated, which does contracting with RIA Health PC, is alcohol use disorder treatment. Lists the Riley Park, but as usual, no actual signature. DXRX Incorporated, listed at 1390 Market Street, Suite 200, San Francisco, California, and the same North Canton address as well. which I did mention before. Next, we have Lead Management Incorporated as the return address at 682 Seneca Street, Volo, Illinois, for a RIA Cargo LLC, and this is dated the 25th of April, 2023. RIA Cargo LLC lists its address at 6545, well, the Registered Agents Incorporated, mind you, their address is at 6545 Market Avenue North, Suite 100, North Canton, Ohio. Next, we have the RIA Melbourne Limited Partnership, which lists the Equity Planning Holding Company and Ned S. Weingart, all at the same address, 23200 Chagrin Boulevard, number 102, Beechwood, Ohio. I wonder if that's a real address. It's a lot of numbers. And next you have also under the RIA Melbourne, you have listed a RIA Jacksonville Limited Partnership, a RIA Coral Springs Limited Partnership, and of course the RIA Melbourne Limited Partnership. And this lists a Peggy Vargas legal assistant. And this is from November 16th, 1990. Now the reason why the fact legal assistants are filling this out, we shall see the implications of that later, and how that forms another CIA cover. National Service Information Incorporated, 145 Baker Street, Marion, Ohio, for OS AIC RIA Incorporated, and this is February 23rd, 2024. Formed out of Delaware, of course, but with a principal office address at 20 East Thomas Road, Suite 2000, Phoenix, Arizona, and purpose is Registered Investment Advisory Services. With Corporation Service Company at 1160 Dublin Road, Suite 400, Columbus, Ohio. And the notary in Florida, 16th February 2024, by Kenya Sistoni. Notary Public, expires of October 16th, 2026, Florida. Next, we have the Cumberland Licensing Corporation, P.O. Box 7543, Cumberland, Rhode Island, for the Roblin Insurance Agency. This is dated the 07/30/2002. Roblin Insurance Agency Incorporated, formed under the state of Massachusetts, 8/28/1952, lists address at 10 Kearney Road, Suite 200, Needham, Massachusetts. Sale of property and casualty insurance as an insurance agent. Now, under Roblin Insurance Agency Incorporated from 2005, lists a return address of Bay Street et al. It's kind of a weird name to have. 6 Beacon Street, Suite 425, Boston, Massachusetts. And then from 2011, we have a CTP RO comply. Attention, Mark Williams, 840 Excelsior Drive, Suite 200, Madison, Wisconsin, for Roblin Insurance Agency. And then we find out that the Roblin Insurance Agency changed their name to RIA Holdings Incorporated, Massachusetts. And that doesn't really list a date on this. I think that was 2017. Well, it says last revised 10/01/2017, but I think they're talking about the official form there. I use official in a sarcastic tone. Date of first use of RIA Financial Services was the June 1st, I believe that's the 6th, 1995. Name of the registrant is Continental Exchange Solutions Incorporated. Business address is 13825 Cerritos Corporate Drive, Suite C, Cerritos, Los Angeles, California. And this lists for RIA money transfer, dated March Nope. Yeah, it's May 29th, 2024. RIA Money Transfer, Sean Felder. It's 7001 Village Drive, Suite 200, Buena Park, California. And the name of the registrant is Dandelion Payments Incorporated Money Transfer Service. Of course, they would need one of those. And it lists the business address at 7000 Village Drive, Suite 200 instead of 7001. It's 7000 Buena Park, California. Now, that's pages for later. Doesn't really... Oh, wait. Maybe. So, yeah, that's it. This document from the many filings, let's say gravitational collapse and other topic. Okay, so a Jerzy Plebensky, that's Jerzy Plebanski, probably some type of Polish name, going Dallas 15 December to attend International Symposium on Gravitational Collapse and Other Topics in Relativistic, and this was marked out saying and put relativity, astrophysics, symposium under auspices of Southwest Center for Advanced Studies. So that brings up a uncommon but unfortunately more realistic than funny joke, that you have an event where all the different entities there and all the people there are all working for the CIA, but they don't know it, and so they're all investigating and reporting on each other, and that would just look like a massive joke. Fortunately, I suspect that that's actually very common. So here we have this business filing, Surety Company, Construction Company, Ohio, Donald N. Corcelli and Kamer Boyle, listed at 4517 Emory Industrial Parkway, Warrensville Heights, Ohio, formerly Pepper Pike, changing the name of the company to Southwest Center for Real Estate Investments Incorporated. This lists a cleared contact at the Chase Manhattan Bank to provide a transcript of all entries into the Chase Manhattan Bank account for a one Mr. Hunt. Now, here's an interesting one that talks about the Masferer Haitian Invasion Group. And CIA Chief of Station learned through personal press contacts that this was partly a matter of luck and partly because of the friendly and cooperative attitude of these press contacts. Shocker. And here's a real big one. Recruitment of Cuban pilots for the Congo by the CIA. And that they're worried about easily triggered publicity around the South Campus of the University of Miami and Miami Station cover firm. Yeah, that's not much of a surprise. Of course, you know, this is all stuff that has been denied multiple times. This references the fullest cooperation concerning the Miami Station, a company named Zenith Technical Enterprises Incorporated and the Wal-Mart Corporation, and the tenant of the University of Miami. So those cover entities are tenants. And the Masferer Group. And then we start into the connection to oil. Ident A is a wealthy, prominent New Orleans businessman. Enlisted as the president of Yoku, that's Y-O-C, it's like cough, Yokoff, it's Y-O-C-O-U-G-H. They're contacted only when their signatures on Yoku documents are required. The use of his own company as a funding mechanism for Yoku recommended several other businessmen, all of which have interests in oil companies. This is a Alfred J. Moran, of which that name pops up a lot, M-O-R-A-N, at 8422 South Claiborne Avenue, New Orleans, Louisiana. Or as they might say, Nolans. Here it lists Ace Marine Survey Incorporated. This is a Florida corporation established by and under the control of J. M. Wave. That's the chief of station. And certified to do business in Florida, but he's all over the place, so who knows. Ace Marine Survey Incorporated was formerly known as Ace Cartography Company, a corporation which had been certified to do business in Florida on 11 July 1962. This corporation was amended on 4th November 1966 to its new name, Ace Marine Survey Incorporated. The president of the corporation is Alfred J. Moran of New Orleans, Louisiana. Mr. Moran is a very prominent businessman in the New Orleans area. He is head of Calvar and his investments in a variety of businesses which include many oil interests. He is known to headquarters representatives particularly in logistics. Ace Marine Survey Incorporated is engaged primarily in marine research, including the study of marine life and testing of marine equipment. However, its general provisions permit it to perform almost any corporate function. That's a common theme with these cover organizations. J.M. Wave's use of the corporation is to provide cover for a maritime vessel, the MV Sonora. The corporation provides status cover and payrolling of the agents assigned to the MV Sonora and the safe area of berthing site from which the vessel operates in the performance of its ostensible business. This account is funded through the Bank and Hall Covert account at the First National Bank of Miami. That's not a surprise at all. Also, the First National Bank of all these different locations is heavily involved in all sorts of corrupt schemes that I've detailed in other videos. But this is a direct link to the CIA. By the following method, a check and the total amount of the deposits is drawn on this account. A credit ticket is obtained by our cleared contact with the cash vault. This credit ticket, together with the appropriate deposit slips for the various corporations, is then turned over to a teller, where it is combined with all other transactions which are processed by that particular teller on the given business day, so money laundering. Since the number of transactions handled by a given teller may go as high as 250 to 300, there is a slight chance of the deposits being attributed to the particular credit ticket which accompanied these deposits. Overt attribution of source, Offshore Navigation Company, 3503 Fern Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. This is a profit-making corporation and has met federal and state requirements as follows, blah, blah, blah. The corporation has provided status cover and payrolling for 10 Cubans as of 31st January 1967. One has to wonder if those are the ones that they go send to the Congo, or if perhaps those might be assassins or some other type of treasonous activity. The berthing location is within a largely tourist or recreational area. Again, the Offshore Navigation Company, New Orleans, is an offshore oil exploration activities and works as a client of Ace Marine Survey Incorporated. Yeah, I think client's a stretch. It's the same thing for the same people doing the same stuff. It's not separate. Now we have Ceres Enterprises Incorporated, which details president of the corporation is Richard W. Freeman and is retired chairman of the board of Delta Airline. Delta, of course, as we know, was involved in an interesting alleged court case and engaged in theft and a whole bunch of things in 2020. The Coca-Cola Bottling Company. He's also the principal owner of the Coca-Cola Bottling Company in New Orleans, and includes investments in oil ventures. Now, there's a different document, which I don't have included here, but details listening devices being included in Coca-Cola bottles, and that, I believe, had to do with that book that they didn't want published. Corporation provided cover for maritime vessels, the MV Barb and the MV Jade. Overt attribution of source, Peterman and Peterman Associates, P.O. Box 8103, Main Post Office, Chicago, Illinois. It's an interesting address to have. Main Post Office. P.O. Box. And listing of this company, series, whatever, I forgot the name at this point, transfers its activities to another entity. Its assets and activities were transferred to another J.M. Wave entities. What a surprise. This lists the First Oceanic Corporation, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Mr. Kenneth Dahlberg, Midwest Regional Chairman of the Finance Committee to re-elect the President. That had to do with Watergate. The Andrews Foundation, a funding mechanism of this agency. Archer Daniels Midland Company, Decatur, Illinois, provided cover for 5 operational assets of this agency between 1964 and 1965. 11 of the firm's employees were briefed. A Lowell W. Andreas and Mr. Dwayne Andreas was not made witting of these cover arrangements. Now we get into this particular interesting detail, which essentially speaking shows the complete and utter sellout of U.S. oil industry to foreign interests. Foreign enemy interests, not only with the blessing, but also with the assistance of the CIA. So, as they would say in past places, but has no place for in the constitutional states of America, but as the British used to once call high treason. Schlumberger Well Surveying Corporation. See Houston munitions bunker leased by subject firm. This lists the Schlumberger. In 1962, Daystrom Incorporated was acquired by Schlumberger Incorporated. The agency had a contract with Daystrom for unclassified items, 49,000 contract for the production of Mark II limpet mines. Schlumberger Ltd is a Dutch firm controlled by French nationals. So here we go back to the Netherlands again, which of course has other connections to Switzerland and the usual. Electromechanical Research Incorporated is a subsidiary of Schlumberger Ltd. There are a number of Schlumberger corporations in Latin America, which are dominated by French nationals. Schlumberger has a patented operation for an oil well shooting service, which is subscribed to by various oil companies. The Schlumberger Well Surveying Corporation in Houston was controlled by Henry Georges Dole, a French national. In August 1951, the agency was interested in contacting Professor Edouard Poldini, a geophysicist and professor at the University of Geneva, there's Switzerland, and a former employee of the Schlumberger Corporation. Used as a channel to a Janus Cantus, who gave information about the fate of the previous employee of the Jersey Company in Hungary, their production figures and extent of exploitation of existing oil fields and exploration of new oil fields, together with the names of the officials of the Russian-Hungarian company who took over the Jersey Company. The FBI conducted an investigation dated June 1953 and determined that Maurice Henry Martin resided at Knott Hill, Wilton, Connecticut, and was employed by the Schlumberger Well Surveying Company, Ridgefield, Connecticut. Informants advised that although Martin was a strongly nationalistic towards France, he had every indication of being anti-Russian. There's no evidence of CP activities. And we'll find out a little bit in this same document why that makes no difference. Pierre Schlumberger, President and Chief Executive Officer of Schlumberger Ltd., Houston, Texas, French citizen, was of contact interest in 1950. Charles C. Parlin, Director of Schlumberger Ltd. and a member of the law firm Shearman, Sterling & Wright, Englewood, New Jersey, U.S. citizen, was of contact interest in 1962. Parlin and Becker, somebody named Becker, shared a hotel room in Holland in 1957. So there's the Netherlands, of course. Member of the same law firm, has Communist Front affiliations, National Council of Churches, or traveled in Parlin in 1956. Okay, so Parlin, I believe, is the name. Yeah, Charles C. Parlin, Director of Schlumberger Ltd. and a member of the law firm Shearman, Sterling Wright, Englewood, New Jersey. Apparently has no contact or whatever. And traveled to 1956, traveled to Russia as a member of a delegation under the sponsorship of the National Council of Churches. Was also the lawyer for a Swiss armament industrialist, I believe that says armament, who sold something to the Nazis and the communist countries since that time. This, of course, this document is basically detailing the operations of the international enemy cabal system and structure. Here, a Daniel Schlumberger, French citizen, archaeologist, and a teacher at the University of Strasbourg, France in 1955, was granted an operational approval for use as contract agent in Kabul in April 1956. Nicholas, that's really hard to say, a French financier and subject Soviet agent, which detailed study of the international relationship of connections existing in French firms, blah, blah, blah. Associate of Daniel Schlumberger was Ruel Curiel of a wealthy Jewish banking family in Cairo, Egypt. Ruel and his brother Henri Curiel had communist backgrounds, and their mother was something to George. This is really hard to read. As you can see, known communist was blah blah blah. Gilbert's brothers, yeah, whatever. From 1940 to 1942, was not known if the Schlumberger Well Surveying Corporation is in any way connected to the Well Surveying Corporation in Tulsa. So the reason why that's important is because Tulsa, Oklahoma, is right next to the Osage Reservation, in which a large number of Osages were blown up or otherwise murdered for oil money, or mineral rights as the word goes. And those events were covered up or assisted to be covered up by the FBI. And I do not think it's a stretch to assume that those murders and explosions were conducted by CIA interests. Schlumberger's subsidiary firm, Machine Bowl, competitor to IBM, are connected with Schneider and Company, 42 Rue de Jean Anjou, 42 Rue d'Anjou, Paris. Francois Sar de Michel, manager of Compagnie Internationale, or Internationale de Commerce, represents Schneider for the USSR and is a Soviet agent. In September 1961, an investigation conducted in France disclosed that everything that takes place in the Lycée is known in Moscow within 48 hours, and the originator of such intelligence is Francois Sar de Michel. Machine Bowl is controlled by General Electric Company of the U.S., and Schneider and Company is affiliated with U.S. Westinghouse Corporation under the name Schneider Westinghouse. So I would suspect it's safe to say that anything that happens within the United States is known within Moscow within 48 hours. With their blessing, no less. Maurice and Remy Schlumberger are affiliated with Lazard Frere and the Worms Bank. Lazard Frere, of course, as we know, is connected with Jesuits. Lazard Frere controls Schneider Westinghouse and his New Orleans branch office. Closely associated with the Schlumbergers is Charles Doe. Doe was born at Odessa in 1911 and arrived in the United States in 1937 to join the Schlumberger Well Surveying Corporation in Houston, Texas. Became a U.S. citizen on 6 September 1950. He's a suspected Soviet agent and was approved for agents in contact use in September 1955. What a surprise. Arthur Henry Frentrop, an employee of the Schlumberger Well Surveying Corporation in Ridgefield, Connecticut, was of contact interest in June 1956. Information concerning his spouse's critical attitudes towards American customs and institutions, and the dominant position she exercised over her husband, was furnished the contact office. So, not only does that document alone point the finger towards the heinous activities that happened in the Osage Reservation, and I suspect continue to happen as far as oil rights goes, but it also details a very extensive interconnected conspiracy with the assistance of the CIA to essentially rob the United States of the oil resources by individuals who are inimical and have hatred for American institutions and customs. What a surprise. That is the very reason why we are in such a situation today and why this country is completely just infested by antagonistic and belligerent enemy agents in essentially all levels of our alleged government system. Now, here's a document that lists the Security Defense System, Intelligence Services Ltd., or Advanced Security Corporation. A Mitchell Livingston Warbell III, born 8th of March 1918 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, served in the Office of Strategic Services and repeatedly came to the attention of CIA through intervening years. Apparently, a Washington representative of the firm Security Consultants International claimed to work for the State Department in January 1974, worked for the CIA in Latin America under the cover of the Coca-Cola Company. Now, of course, this is saying that it's false, but as we saw before, it's more than likely true. Because the Coca-Cola Company in Louisiana works for the CIA, basically. FBI representatives in Buenos Aires. Now, this is listed Charles F. Phelan, Phalen, Chief Security Support Division. Now, that sticks out to me because in the Fairfield County, a well-known family, Phelan, controls the sheriff's office. And now, more information on the money laundering mechanisms which continue today on behalf of enemy interests foreign to the United States. Vernon Fund was created by the agency in June 1958 as an ostensibly private philanthropic foundation legally incorporated under the laws with an office in the District of Columbia. Legally incorporated just means on paper. It is used as a cover and funding mechanism for Project DTL Lamprey. This objective of this project is the development of organization and individual assets capable of strengthening the unity of non-communist teachers and their organizations throughout the world. These objectives are carried out through the active support by the agency of the international programs of the National Education Association and the World Confederation of Organizations by the teaching profession. Now, the National Education Association is listed as a PB Lintern, and the organizations of the teaching profession a JB LACPOD, or whatever, with which NEA is affiliated. In March 1967, because of exposure of the Vernon Fund and news media, the board members were contacted, advised as follows. Each Vernon Fund board member is being advised that he will receive a copy of the blah, blah, blah. This stuff's really not important. Albert Blake Dick III, President AB Dick Company, Chicago, Illinois, was granted covert security approval, winning use in connection with the funding project, that thing. Secretary General of the World Confederation of Organizations in the teaching profession, a William George Carr, and Bryce Jr. Rhea, a cleared attorneys panel. World Confederation of Organizations in the teaching profession, funded by the Vernon Fund, a Raymond Joseph, I believe that's Snike, coordinator for African activities in Washington, D.C., and administrative officer of the World Confederation of Organizations of the teaching profession. And here is the American Friends of the Middle East, purpose for deploying aggressive propaganda. Dorothy Thompson, columnist. Here's the San Jacinto, or San Jacinto Fund, Youth Affairs. Here's an MD, that's hard to read, Anderson Hospital and Tumor Institute, a study program to determine the effects in diverse biological systems resulting from exposure to high-intensity coherent radiation was contracted with the MD Anderson Hospital and Tumor Institute, University of Texas, Houston, Texas in October 1963, but as of April 16, 1964, where there was a hold order against going ahead with the contract because of a question as to why the agency should bear the whole cost of the contract, which was to be for interdepartmental use. In May 1967, a note on the file indicated that a MD or HD Anderson Hospital, no, MD, I think it's an M, yes, an M, and Tumor Institute will engage in classified work for the agency. Marshall Foundation of Houston, Texas is considered one of the most vulnerable to exposure, and Texas channeled funds from the agency to the School of Industrial and Labor Relations at Cornell University. What a surprise. Partner, this is a different one, lists a partner in large and leading law firm of Fulbright, Crooker, Freeman, Bates, and Jaworski at Houston, Texas, and a trustee of the MD Anderson Medical Foundation, a John Henry Freeman. This is Ernest Dashiell Cockrell. At the time, he was president of two oil companies in Houston, Texas, Oil Production Maintenance Incorporated and Production Maintenance Company. Of course, I have detailed all the CIA, much of the CIA's activity, but here's more. Douglas B. Marshall, agency interest in the Cullen Foundation. Marshall was vice president of the Quintana Petroleum Corporation of Houston, Texas, which is a holding company owned by the Hugh Roy Cullen family. Marshall's wife, Margaret Cullen Marshall, is a daughter of Hugh Roy Cullen. That's Cullen. Now here's a Oveda Culp Hobby, director of the Federal Security Agency. Aid and funding arrangements through the Hobby Foundation of Houston, of which she is president. And Hobby and Foundation in connection with her possible utilization as an advisory committee of a broadcasting activity, University of Air, directed at the students and intellectuals of Cuba. And here's a William Pettis, Jr. Hobby, associate editor of the Houston Post. And these are all obviously affiliated, operating with, funded, and supported, and in many cases acting on behalf of the Central Intelligence Agency. This lists the Brown and Root Incorporated. Brown and Root Incorporated, trustee, or this is a Norman Brown or Herman Brown, president and director of Brown and Root Incorporated, and president and trustee of the Brown Foundation, Houston, Texas. Granted covert security approval, blah, blah, blah. Governor Alan Shivers of Texas was on the advisory board of Fact Form News in September 1955 and was listed as trustee of the American Good Government Society in 1965 and listed a death penalty for the offense of being a member of the Communist Party. Of course, as we know, the Communist Party is intricately involved with the CIA, so essentially speaking, before I get more into this extensive listing of money laundering and treason and other nasty, heinous things that they've been doing, it's important to understand the idea between the communist versus so-called capitalist, anti-communist, pro-communist, all that nonsense, and its relation to Cuba. Think about it in terms of two equal players working together on a chessboard. One controls one controls black, one controls white, or is the spy versus spy? Well, the other way to think about it is that it's checks and balances, or the two-party system. Essentially speaking, if somebody decides to go independent or rogue, they can be targeted by one or the other, either as anti-communist or non-communist, so on and so forth. They work together to control themselves, their system. And then Cuba is essentially a middle ground, a training ground or crucible, if you will, for them to develop so-called anti-communist or pro-communist, because essentially speaking, the CIA and the Soviet Union together pulled people out of Cuba for different projects and things like that, so that then they can blame it on Cuba and say, oh, we didn't do anything. That's the conceptual operational practice there. One hand washes the other. There's no such thing as communist or anti-communist. There's simply, which side of the chessboard are you on? Yep. Now, Thomas D. Cabot, Vice President and Director of the International Relations, Texas Butadiene, I don't know, and Chemical Corporation, was residing in Lausanne, Switzerland, was residing in Lausanne, Switzerland. Of course, Switzerland, as we know, is the place where all of our fictitiously governmental codes come from. Executive Committee of MIT, a Thomas Dudley Cabot. William A. Smith Construction Company, Texas Eastern Transnational Transitional Corporation, and the Citizen State Bank of Houston. Anderson Foundation, Texas State Court of Inquiry, MD Anderson Foundation, Texas State Court of Inquiry, special counsel, this person, a Leon Jaworski, special counsel on that inquiry into the assassination of President Kennedy, had achieved prominence when he ran prosecutor at the Nuremberg War trials. What a surprise. Not really. Now, moving on to a different area, we've got from 28 February 1961, listing of the Redskin Project, or something like that. Psychological Assessment Associates, type of cover organization. Agency has cleared employment services in Pittsburgh. Employment Service Company, located at the Union Trust Building in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, operated by Margaret A. Kearney. And this lists a different name, Employers Service Company. So here's got Employment Service Company and Employers Service Company. It's a little bit difficult of a typo to make. Not impossible, but unlikely. OTR psychologists would be documented in true name. They were Doctors Bradt, B-R-A-D-T, and McKee, M-C-K-E-E. Training will be conducted in SR Safe House in New York. SR representative will probably request a safe house in Baltimore. Redskin agents. 30 or 45 Redskin agents processed this year. Now, if we look at the business filings for the Employers Service Company, of which we can access the one from Missouri, lists a William H. Adderley, filed November 18th, 1941. William H. Adderley, allegedly, is associated with the Faceless One Incorporated, filed in Florida in August 4, 1998. That's an interesting name for a company, the Faceless One. William Adderley II is listed as Secretary-Treasurer at 313 State Route Road, 7 Plantation, Florida. Of course, no mention at all of Missouri. And Eric Carter. There's that last name, Carter, again. Actually, I don't know. That was Clark. Clark's the name I see a lot. Well, Carter comes up a lot, too. But either way, there's a blank section. This is the notary public, mind you. Eric Carter, but is also listed on the document, the forming document, as basically notarizing his own company, it would appear. Day is left blank. It says, set my hand and seal this blank day of July 1998. County of, that's hard to read. State of Florida. For me, the undersigned authority and for said county state personally appeared. Eric Carter is personally known to me. Oh wait, no, he's not the notary public. Has produced blank as identification. So no identification was produced. That's what we can surmise from that. Document was prepared by Mark S. Solomon, Esquire, 901 South Federal Highway, number 300, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, blah, blah, blah. And there's a Florida bar number. Then we have the 13th Street Church of God, Incorporated, a Ruth J. Gardner, listed at P.O. Box 2606, Fort Pierce, Florida. However, the email is gardner1701 at comcast.net. And listed as the secretary. Also, the 13th Street Church of God lists a 1902 North 13th Street as the official address. Purposes for the corporation: cultivate relationships in our community through educational and scientific methods and religion. By doing these things, we can help alleviate hunger and illiteracy in our community while increasing social, moral education and economic awareness. And of course, we all know what that term actually means, what that purpose actually means. Lists a James William Adderley, and that's 240 San Marcos Avenue, Fort Pierce, Florida. So not suspicious at all. Also Shirley Adderley, same location. Now moving on to some other parts of this. We've got a TSD Psychological Assessment Associates firm, and results were verbally transmitted. Psychological Assessment Associates, this is for that Redskin thing. Here's a David Lamar Christ, Applied Physics Division, Office of Research and Development, had a contractual relationship with Devenco, Devenco, and had industrial security approval. Instrumental in development of a anti-disturbance mine and time pencil and an IR beacon, and contract with facilities with Baird Atomic, BAIRD Atomic, aggressively recruiting and training graduate engineers. September 1960, he and two associates were apprehended. 2.5 years incarceration. Permitted the maintenance of a very difficult cover situation and successful extraction of all three men. Isn't that interesting? The over-the-horizon radar program, new audio surveillance techniques with the laser probe, microtechnology power transistor, 3 novel intelligence gathering systems to function in the air and space and in the sea, audio surveillance countermeasures, and application of computers to the problem. So those are all just highlights from a... We can't read the whole document because this would take forever because there's just so much. 10 professional research and development scientists. That person individually directed, as it says. Now here's an interesting mention of a Margrave Secret Service from 23 December 1963. Al Thompson recently asked me for my opinion of Margrave Secret Service, 6 West Randolph Street, Chicago, insofar as cover potential is concerned. The company was formed in 1888 and has offices and representatives in the principal cities of the world. FBI contacts said they had no information and that George E. Margrave is sole owner. So if they have no information, then how do they know that? And son of the founder. Doubts that these are any more than investigative correspondence. And I would suggest that that is confirmation that they are in fact more than so-called investigative correspondence, whatever that means. A casual inquiry into Richard Kane, chief investigator, Cook County Sheriff's Office, said that Kane distrusts Hargrave and he knows him personally. What a surprise. Says he's not a discreet person. Isn't that nice? Now here, cover name Henry Bismarck, a former OSS man, accepted a position with the University of Accra in Ghana. And of course is a CIA asset, so-called. Now, let's go ahead and look at the implications in these documents towards drugs, and specifically the Operation Project MK Ultra and Operation Midnight Climax. This document, a memorandum, lists an FNU Gottlieb, Gottlib, worked for the Times in Washington. Believed to be Sanford Gottlieb, employee of the National Committee on the Sane Nuclear Policy, and verified that one Sandy Gottlieb was employed at the New York Times. Now, the big reason for that is that a Sidney Gottlieb was listed for the Midnight Climax testing project operation thing in San Francisco, the capital of all the LGBTQ plus IA gay pride garbage and people going outside and trying to groom children for all kinds of nasty reasons. Gottlieb is Ernesto Betancourt. Vieira does not know Gottlieb, but talked to him because Gottlieb said he was recommended by Ernesto Betancourt, who has resided in the Washington Territory for more than 10 years. Betancourt was a former agency asset, is currently Chief of Economic Planning and Budget, OAS. Conversation initially started in English, but continued in Spanish. We do not know why Gottlieb was interested in Joaquin Sangenis or Juan A. Paula. I would suggest that all that stuff had to do with information gained and attempted to be confirmed from MK Ultra, the subset of Operation. Well, Midnight Climax is under MK Ultra. Northwest Management Services Inc. is Office Space cover, and it said trail would end there. Evans mentioned that the bona fide law firm occupying the other portion of the MH Mutual offices are the attorneys for John Dean. These lawyers are cleared and witting, and also lists a other law firm without going overseas calls to such places as Japan and Europe. Now here we get into the really nasty consequences of what these individuals are doing. Here we've got a registered mail, number 251067, London, England. Regular fee $2.10, but postage was $93 and return receipt was $32. Now here's the response from the Legal Center for the Disabled to a Sergei Chernono, 1106 11th Street, Sacramento, California. It acknowledges a receipt of a letter regarding difficulties encountered with the police and FBI, and that they would provide legal representation if they attempt to institutionalize him or there were further legal problems. So let's find out what those problems and or difficulties were. I've received letters like this before. It's just clear that these individuals are all involved together. You get that nice little response of, oh, I'm sorry to hear you've had problems. Yeah, sure. This lists the Deputy District Attorney on August 16, 1977 was informed that FBI agents and Secret Service used police department to harass, use a pencil of anesthesia gas, or they supply to the manager of the building in which he lives a pencil of anesthesia gas. He says, freeze me with anesthesia gas, then push drugs, poison in my mouth to torture me, to take my sleep away, or to bleed my rectal. Other chemicals to brainwash me, to use me in political assassination, which I refused on January 20th, 1976. 8th and I Streets. Man came to me from police or post office, U.S. Department of Justice, to freeze me with gas and told me to take gun pistol, and will tell you where to go to shoot to kill Mr. Sergeant Shriver. I refused. Mr. Seisel of Marshall Hotel. In February 1976, police intelligence told me that assassination will not happen here. How about to move to Maryland State? In this letter, I asked you to get report from Dr. Frederick S. Baker, MD, colon and rectal surgery on January 31st, 1978. Police put frame up on me. Police use lie. Police use mental case to take advantage of me and tell me that right wing do use such people like me. So that letter is, essentially speaking, corroborated by the documents of Operation Midnight Climax. And then they make a forgery letter using wording from that other document. Now, I'm familiar with some of the linguistic issues when a Russian speaks English and writes in English. For instance, Russian does not have articles. And then they have things like neutral verbs and nouns and things like that, which is mostly foreign to anyone that speaks English. Now, articles are foreign to speakers of Russian. So it's very clear from different patterns in this forged document that it was not actually written by the one who wrote that other letter. In this forged document, it mentions Lee Harvey Oswald and uses on multiple occasions the word "this," and says Lee Harvey Oswald is assassin. Lee Harvey Oswald is assassin. He has weapon or has ordered one. And here in brackets, it uses the word right wing. As we noted on that other letter, it also uses the word right wing. Sent a telegram to the Department of State. It lists the taking of a truth drug, which is interesting that this individual would use that phrase, truth drug. And confirmation of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. will be killed by a James Earl Ray. And said they tried to drug me to keep amnesia, and that Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald have a weapon. Now, this document is so clearly a forgery, attempting to solidify that this individual is whacked out of their mind, but is also confirming the assassination of JFK via Lee Harvey Oswald and the assassination of Martin Luther King via James Earl Ray. Now, the easiest conclusion here is that James Earl Ray did not exist, at least as far as what they report, and neither did Lee Harvey Oswald, as they're attempting to use this individual to confirm it. And of course, being a foreigner, much easier to manipulate. So that is a technical example of the implications and use of Operation MK Ultra and Midnight Climax, and how it relates to other similar incidents happening today and continuing to happen in many parts. Now, this next part lists the Brazilian diplomatic passport and U.S. Florida state plates, the transport of contraband and also narcotics, sets of false documentation, birth Belize, British Honduras, and another in Spain, Brazilian diplomatic passport, undisclosed package to Miami for $5,000, American counterparts protection, tried to cooperate with Interpol and almost landed in Miami jail as Interpol failed him, contact person who helps him bring in contraband from Honduras, turned out to be legal immigration chief also in charge of customs. What a surprise. And this person was appointed on presidential orders, and that no investigation that was promised has taken place. And that the ones to operate lack narcotics training and experience. What a surprise. Now, that document is to Director Miami, Mexico City, Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro, San Salvador, and Tegucigalpa. And this is a report about a Maria Paula Sousa Freitas and a Nogueira de Souza. Yeah, just a couple different names. And that is dated, 1973, 30th of April. There you go. Next, we have this interesting tidbit of a Jose Xavier Cortez, or Hernandez, represents himself as a priest. He knows a Roman Catholic, but very liberal in Cuba. And Knights of Columbus were pretty well entrenched, and that they would need to take the bull by the horns and begin things, or the Knights of Columbus would gain the advantage. Says the bombing of the Church of Father Boza in Cuba had definitely been known as an act of autoaggression,
and said that a red flag with hammer and sickle was found in the debris. Yep, that sounds like the CIA. Cortez Hernandez was never a priest. It was previously reported that Atisbos, Mexico City newspaper, had reported that Cortez was a Catholic priest and a member of the Jesuit order until 1950, when he left the order because of his, quote, rebellious and anarchic spirit. That is exactly the purpose of the Jesuit order. Belongs to a schismatic Catholic church called the Mexican Apostolic Catholic Church, and is interested in establishing a schismatic church in Cuba. That sounds like the Jesuit mission of go set the world on fire. And this next document from 1959 lists a wealthy anti-Castro Cubans planning to sabotage the coming sugar harvest. And that's, of course, where they developed all of their planning, the sabotage, extensive sabotage of chickens, crops, meat, and everything else that they're currently doing in the United States. Now, to particularly look at that topic that is honestly not as big a deal as all the rest of this, the JFK assassination, here we've got a document that says that a report from Tegucigalpa saying that they can positively identify the Kennedy assassins, plural. Now here's an interesting one. Attaches a letter from Sir Charles Spry, S-P-R-Y, Director General of the Australian Security Intelligence Organization. He advises against declassification of the Warren Commission document and anonymous telephone calls to the Canberra Embassy before and after the assassination of President Kennedy. And CIA staff confers with this recommendation. Now we have this document about KGB, Nikhonov's first assignment. Nikonov personally reviewed KGB files to determine if Lee Harvey Oswald had been KGB agent. He researched 5 thick volumes where he confirmed that no time an agent controlled by the KGB. Watched him closely and constantly, and a poor shot. Okay, so first of all, 5 thick volumes kept on somebody who's not connected? That's unlikely. And confirming that the person did exist as in reality, an individual, and that he was a poor shot, and that they watched him closely and constantly. So of course the CIA and the USSR KGB are working together to fabricate this Lee Harvey Oswald garbage. Now the more logical conclusion is found on a detailed conversation between individuals with different code name identities. It doesn't say who they really are, and I'm sure if I went through all of the different aliases and pseudonyms in the documents, I'd probably be able to find out who they are. But that's not really important. Here under marked number 10, L1 talked about assassination of President John F. Kennedy. According to L1, in 1969, L1 personally saw Fidel Castro receive a group of U.S. radicals. Castro talked to them for 2 hours about why just one assassin could not possibly have killed Kennedy. Castro ordered a reenactment of the crime using his best marksmen, and they could not duplicate what Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly did by himself. Of course, that individual, I'm sure, didn't exist. L1 said that 3 groups were involved in killing the president: 1 group of Cubans, 1 group of mafiosos, and a 3rd group of mercenaries. The 3rd group included a man with a Greek name. Now, as far as the Martin Luther King Jr., following information furnished by El Nergo concerning suspect assassin of Martin Luther King Jr. named Eric Stavo Galt, alias Harvey Lohmeyer, alias John Willard, born 20th of July, 1931. And now, Lenergo has positively identified accused assassin as James Earl Ray, born 10th March 1928 in Illinois. Yeah, sure. Served in the U.S. Army from February 1946 to 1948. And here we go with the smearing of the military, who they hate, and attempt to used as cover for all of their heinous activities and to get members of the military to take the fall for all of their nonsense. Discharged as inept and unable to adjust. Once confined to mental hospital. Long criminal record for burglary, armed robbery, and forgery. Has been missing from Missouri State Penitentiary since 23rd of April 1967. Labeled Galt. One has to wonder if there is a person that actually exists there. And if not, in fact, the person they're reporting on is somebody else that they're attempting to frame. Now, this next document, London Station, scrap of information, MI5, British Security Service, report on Americans. Jim Garrison, District Attorney, Orleans, Louisiana. I believe that should include New Orleans. A secret and reliable source has reported that the Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation has been in touch with Jim Garrison. One source states that the initiative in this contact appears to have come from the foundation, and the purpose of it seems to be persuade Garrison to write an article about the late President Kennedy's assassination, which presumably the foundation could use in some way. And it states the legal attaché, FBI representative, and if any executive action is to be taken. I think we all know what that means. Now, the real interesting one lists a Martin Luther King overt number 353062. So Martin Luther King was, surprise, surprise, working for the CIA. Now, it also lists a Reverend Dominique George Pyre, P-I-R-E, with a covert number 4778008, and a Philip John Noel Baker. Now, one of the assumptions here could be that these are all cover names, and that Martin Luther King Jr. was, in fact, a cover name for who knows who. And that individual, when they were assassinated, nobody was actually killed. They assassinated the cover identity. Whereas it is highly likely that JFK was assassinated as far as all presidents after they have run their course of being publicly present in rallies and whatnot, and then get elected, they always get offed. Because it's much easier to control a puppet pretending to be them, a body double as it were, where that person is just killed. Now, we're going to look at the CIA's active pushing of leftist propaganda specifically. The fact that all of their so-called anti-communist operations really is just yet another cover for them to get away with their international cabal conspiracy, working hand in glove with the alleged communist authority structure of the USSR and China and other places. This lists the leftist writer press service, acceptable production rate, Mexico station in the project outline. So, to specify that better, leftist writer press service produced 35 individual articles and serialized political feature articles which were distributed to tiny newspapers throughout Latin America. Despite this acceptable production rate, the project has not achieved the objective set for it by the Mexico station in the project outline. Project renewal request, late June 1968, more effective and political, more leftist operation. So they want to make it more leftist, basically. Administrative and financial roof project for the individual handling and exploitation of singleton leftist writer assets. The meetings were unruly. Sure, we've seen those unruly meetings relatively recently in many places, considering the proliferation of so-called leftist ideology, which of course is naturally from the CIA. Here, Lynn Luck was formally terminated in the summer of 1966. He spent much of his termination bonus on sending his wife back to France. The wife is French. Now that's important considering the previous document we read about the French administrative oil monopoly to take over U.S. oil interests. He reached agreements with the Guatemalan defense minister, right to publish U.S. $4,000 for the right to publish 10,000 copies of his first book, J.M. Rod book, consular appointment by the summer of 1968 or 3, I'm not sure. has been the first to so-and-so has been the first to submit articles. Actually a political rightist, Lynn Harp agent, continent-wide anti-communist movement, private detective agency, prevent further contact. Oh, so the neurotic woman who he had married hired a private detective agency. That's the French person, and this person is actually a political rightist, not a leftist, but they want to push leftist propaganda, not rightist propaganda, and so they already have people pushing the rightist propaganda, now they need the leftist. And so here you see that the CIA equally, while they're pushing all their anti-communist stuff, is also pushing pro-communist stuff. As a part with actually working directly with the USSR and all that nonsense. Confer with the Guatemalan president and plans to enter politics. Strike out on his own. Yeah, sure. It's like all the Jesuits that all seem to get kicked out of Jesuit things so that they can all do Jesuit activities. Former leftism, become extreme rightists. Identity before has been important. Unknowns she wrote amounted to libel slander. The El Imparcial owner said that he received the newspapers El Dia of Honduras, La Prensa Gráfica of El Salvador, La Prensa of Nicaragua, La República, Costa Rica, La Estrella of Panama, and Últimas Noticias of Caracas, and had noted that these newspapers all published Lynn Luck's articles, but had not, to his knowledge, published articles by any of the other Land Corps writers. And they call this a covert action production unit. There's been, of course, differences of opinion. Many cease being leftists harmful to the image. Need to be goaded continually by Lynn Luck to turn in manuscripts. Emotional extremists, suffering at times from deep melancholy and at other times from inexplainable rages. It sounds like the current woke so-called people we have today. And many can no longer be termed leftists. So basically, nut jobs. But nut jobs because of brainwashing by CIA activities. He did not pay his co-workers fees or salaries. Isn't that nice? And activities in Venezuela, leading newspapers, Central American republics, automatic publication, La Paz station and assistance in Bolivia. But it has not been possible to ascertain whether Leoncourt articles have been published with any regularity in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, or Ecuador. It is too much to ask third country stations to scan the press daily for articles by 7 different people. Mexico station has appreciated assistance received from Caracas, San Jose, and Guatemala City, stations which have been principal source of clippings. List 1 of Identity's 10 virtues is the fact that he never formally quit the Communist Party and has done nothing to irritate the party. And then, station will continue to pursue the development of a small and responsive leftist writer group as one phase of the Leoncourt operation. And blah, blah, blah. So, of course, naturally, a lot of them would probably try to dismiss this by saying, oh, well, they were just trying to develop a mechanism to obtain moles inside of leftist and communist activities. But considering the ramifications of what they've been doing today that we see all throughout the United States, all throughout the globe, of this propagation of a woke, belligerent rulership, it's very clear that the CIA is the principal action group behind forming that. Which also has to do with the fact that on many of the documents they list action a lot as though it's a code word. And Identities 1, Ricardo Garibay Ortega, independent Mexican socialist, political editorialist, and Excelsior and prize-winning author of political books. And blah, blah, blah. It details all the other cover identities there. And now, the operations. This document from 1976, Reorganization of Staff Structure of the Operations Directorate. Now, this document, clearly written by an attorney, but reflects a similar document that we saw earlier, recently published, about Department of Defense law enforcement. This states that it supersedes basically past publications, and it's a program designed to enable the directorate to conform to the perceptions of the executive. That's what they're concerned with, the perception. Yeah. And here it lists the associate deputy director for the operations, but then it lists an assistant deputy director for operations. Direct and supervise covert officers, non-official cover officers, and non-official cover operations. Lists the associate general counsel directly to work with the ADDO. Comptroller of the agency, so it's inventing all these different titles and other nonsense that they always do. Undertakes special studies, policy and coordination staff. Chief of the staff will act for so-and-so if these officers are unavailable. Those are the DDO and ADDO. Lists crisis management, narcotics, all the things they do. Other agencies of the government, Central Clearinghouse, SRO, SADO, DDO, career management staff, advice and support. So you see they're just making up all kinds of offices and positions and whatnot. Issuance of propaganda guidance, non-attributable, black propaganda and deception operations. Order of battle. That's an interesting specification there. Order of battle. All source intelligence. I think we know what that means. And here we've got these sections that are so clearly made by some sort of legal expert. Exceptions of paragraphs 2.f.3 and 3d. See also 4c, 1c above. Yeah. That's nice. Records and information control system. Index or maintain the foreign counterintelligence index and record keeping. Serve as the director focal point for Privacy Act and Freedom of Information Act matters and other litigation involving directed information. And handle and coordinate all Privacy Act and FOIA requests addressed to the Operations Director. That is the counterintelligence staff. They're the ones doing that. And of course, anybody who doesn't know what counterintelligence means, it means you operate against other intelligence outfits to counteract what they're doing. And they're the ones handling FOIA requests. And this is signed William W. Wells, Deputy Director for Operations. No signature. Could have been written by absolutely anybody. And here it's got a different, of course it was contained in the alleged filings, so I'm sure it's official as far as official could go, but clearly written by some attorney, and they don't really care about finding a signature because everybody knows this stuff's all garbage and fake anyway. And then here we've got the structure here. It's listed DDO, AGC/DDO under or over off to the right or left of the ADDO, and ADDO/Development Clandestine Corps. And these, of course, are all different entities. Imagine trying to follow those designations. Be like, who are all these people? Domestic Collection Division. Isn't that an interesting entity that they've got their Domestic Collection Division? Next, we're going to look at the 201 system. 201 system provides a method for identifying a person of specific interest to the Operations Directorate. And this is from 1974. And for controlling and filing all pertinent information about that person, the system offers to provide blah, blah, blah. 201 personality list could also be produced for all persons who were born in Germany between the years 1915 and 1920 with the occupation computer specialist who are now citizens of the United States located in Mexico. Brings to mind a particularly apparently prolific painter, who I doubt painted any of his own work, listed apparently out of Merida, Mexico, who is of former Jewish German descent, probably emplaced by the CIA as usual. Now, 201 files will be opened automatically for anyone from these different places in the Arab Republic of Egypt, British Commonwealth, Israel, Cuba, North Vietnam, and the USSR. So this is, of course, part of the overall operational component of the Cabal Global Control Takeover structure that we've pretty much looked at in depth in all of these files that we looked at before. So here's some examples of the 201 tracking. 201-867508, assistant to the deputy accountant for the National Development Corporation. Claims to have received a good salary, plus a TS 2005 a month, house for which she has to pay only 10%. Grew up in Queens, New York. Now notice they're right. Grew up in Queens, New York. African Methodist Episcopal Church easily found employment with New York Jews. Could hire a good black secretary for 2/3 of what they had to pay a white. All right, so ignoring that section, 2/3 of what they had to pay a white, notice it says easily found employment with New York Jews. That's a big deal. Generally, it's not easy to find employment with New York Jews, and we'll find out later in this particular document why that's so important. Always active in social causes, member of the Jamaican Rifle Club, claims to have fingered 2 infiltrators, that her instructor was another infiltrator. Well, she was an infiltrator, and I don't think infiltrator is the right word, because I guarantee that that mechanism was set up by the CIA. And so essentially this person was recruited as an asset. And she set up a mechanism to evade the draft. And with a friend, subject, the founder of the Servicemen's Union. These are all CIA things, by the way. Provides a home in Dar es Salaam for Daniel Finley, 26-year-old son of a prominent electrical contractor in Dayton, Ohio. And 3 audiences with the president. He has provided prototype lathes and guns. So first of all of this is arms trafficking of plans specifically, linked not directly to the CIA, but it's very clear that there's a CIA hand in all of this, and this is part of the global cabal operation, and that this individual probably is from Dar es Salaam and just grew up in Queens, New York. She described herself as similar to a religious convert, and that they needed experts from China and North Korea. So I think we're understanding the picture of what the CIA actually is and what we're really looking at here. It's the facade and the cover of competition is just like the facade and cover of Republicans versus Democrats. It's completely fake. Now here's another individual, 201-879961. And an individual said he knew J.K. Lance had arranged assassination of Martin Luther King. There is no Martin Luther King. That's a cover identity. He also suspected J.K. Lance's involvement in assassination of Malcolm X. Likely also another cover identity. Said he had no luck in getting visa from the Chi-Coms for Peking visit. And planned for a unified effort among all colored peoples to fight racial discrimination worldwide. And that is a tagline that persists today. And of course, the ironic thing here is that what's not mentioned here is that there's generally a dislike of black people among China and Korea. I don't know why, I just know that that seems to be a common trait. And as I've mostly seen or heard secondhand, thirdhand, whatnot, in various experience, that does seem to be the relative pattern, that people from Korea and Japan and China and just generally all over Asia, they don't have a very strong liking for black people. Don't know why. They just don't. And then here's the section that says he clearly harbors resentment of King's relatively affluent background as compared with his own. Well, that's probably because that cover identity was provided with more funding. Anyway, he talked about a problem of individual freedom in Africa. And that there's a JPIX 1 evaluation of Williams. Has a lot to learn, and his trip is opening his eyes and confronting him with facts and ideas he otherwise completely unaware of. He is likely to profit from it because he's basically intelligent and capable, and not just a nut like a Jomo Logan. So these, of course, are people with significant international backing, and in many cases likely, as it says, important to the CIA and their operations. Now, here's the big one. See, in TV shows and movies, we are always taught that the cream of the crop, the best of the best, are CIA agents. Let's go ahead and read what the CIA writes about their agents. Agents. This paragraph sets forth policy, responsibility, and authorities concerning an engagement with the management of agents. General, agents are witting manpower assets unique to the operations directorate who carry out espionage and covert action tasks on behalf of the agency. Agents are not employees of the U.S. government. They are self-employed individuals whose services may be acquired or terminated at any time. Care must be taken to distinguish between agents delineated or something herein. It's got a reproduction mark over that word and I can't read it. And independent contractors defined in HR 20-53A2. Of course, this is naturally written by attorneys. There's just so many of them involved in this garbage and treason. I honestly think that most attorneys, the majority, especially estate planning ones, are traitors. Overt and witting, as to use their word that they have in these things, witting, I would say willful, or knowledgeable and willful. Well, actually, they would say that too, but anyway. Personnel policy. Agents cannot claim rights and privileges normally granted to U.S. government employees. Therefore, they will not be managed in accordance with normal personnel and administrative standards. Initial approval of the counterintelligence staff is required before any commitments are made or any classified information is disclosed to an agent. Agents will receive compensation benefits and emoluments in amounts in a manner deemed best by the operations directorate to motivate and control them. Isn't that an interesting way to word that? Subject to the following limitations. No commitment may be made to an agent to provide gross compensation, basic compensation, additional compensation, fees, etc. at a rate which, if projected on an annual basis, would exceed the maximum rate for a GS-15 without prior approval by the blah, blah, blah. And of course, here we see the very first concept that the CIA and all of their different affiliate apparatuses, including the KGB and all the different global outfits and the oil takeover people and all of them, what is the main mechanism they always use to try to control people? Finance. Economic control. And they, of course, take taxes out and they do all kinds of nasty stuff. But either way, when we read this, we understand that they couldn't care less about their agents. Their agents are not important to the CIA. And above all else, they want to be able to control them. They're not as valued as they pretend them to be in movies and TV shows. Now, we'll look at the last element of their operations and specifically how it relates to the activities in the United States military, of which they despise the U.S. military, specifically for that oath of allegiance that members of the U.S. military have to take. I would say that that's more than likely the primary issue among other issues of military assets being capable of derailing and identifying the treasonous nature of the CIA. I'm sure that's a big one. This list is a Daniel Flores, age 26. Brown, color of hair black, complexion dark. This is a football player and current residence at 2828 Connecticut Avenue Northwest, 203 Washington, D.C. He lists that he would be willing to travel within the United States as long as it did not involve a permanent move whereby my legal residence would be changed. Worked 2 years as security guard in the American embassies in La Paz, Bolivia, and Lima, Peru, and now as a reserve status in the Army. Achieved rank of Corporal E4, Occupational Specialty 0141, and expiration date of current reserve 1962. Bank account of wife's income with the Union Trust Company. Now you remember, of course, where all those business filings come from, the Union Trust building. But the Union Trust Company is listed at 5th and H Streets, Northwest Washington, D.C., not, Superior Avenue in Cleveland, or any of the Philadelphia, or any of all the other places that apparently they are located. Also lists a Gulf Oil Corporation with a P.O. Box address at Atlanta, Georgia. And Dorothy A. Moran. Now, if you remember previously, there was a listed Moran for different CIA involvement as a legal secretary. Remember, most of those business filings were filed by a legal secretary. Boykin and DeFrancis, former Department of State. Now, the father was a former Baptist minister, Mexican Baptist Church. And we know a lot of Baptists are involved with the Masons, other things like that. Now, this is different, but associated document for Daniel Flores. Place of birth, Portland, Oregon. And for Dorothy Arnett Flores, or Moran, the wife, legal secretary, Arnold and Porter, Guayaquil, Ecuador, and Lima, Peru, as residences. Guayaquil, Ecuador, 1969 to 1971, and Lima, Peru, 1971 to 1974, where allegedly she met this Daniel Flores. Lists a nephew with a date of birth listed as UK. That's very odd. I don't know what happened there. Place of birth, New Orleans, Louisiana. Of course, we know that the CIA was heavily involved there, and I'm sure had a lot to do with the catastrophe of Hurricane Katrina, which was definitely done by the CIA, and that this nephew is employed by the U.S. Army. Now, here's the kicker. I know that you can't just get a posting as a security guard in an embassy. That is considered a preferential post, only afforded to those with special connections. Now, this other document, which was listed in the same filing for that, but apparently has no connection to it other than the fact that everybody has signed these things. The Attorney General lists organizations as totalitarian, fascist, communist, or subversive, or as seeking to alter the form of government of the United States by unconstitutional means. Well, that doesn't really matter, because the current government of the United States is, in fact, not constitutional itself. It's a foreign entity, and as we can see, the CIA is behind some very extensive operations for treason, and the constitutional definition of treason, which means aiding and abetting foreign enemies, as well as waging war on the United States, of which they're doing all of that. Now, this lists an American Patriots Incorporated, which I expect is a CIA outfit. And here's the other thing, is that I believe that all of these entities are CIA outfits, and that the reason why they want somebody to sign this is to ensure that that person is not already employed by the CIA in some capacity. Also lists the Black Dragon Society, California Emergency Defense Committee, Chopin Cultural Center. Chopin is allegedly a musician. It's very odd, or was. Citizen Emergency Defense Conference, Committee for Constitutional and Political Freedom, Committee for the Protection of the Bill of Rights, Committee to Defend the Rights and Freedoms of Pittsburgh's Political Prisoners, Committee to Uphold the Bill of Rights. And these are not even close to all the names. I'm just picking out the ones that are really interesting. Connecticut Committee to Aid Victims of the Smith Act, Dante Alighieri Society between 1935 and 1940, Frederick Douglass National Educational Center, George Washington Carver School, New York City, Harlem Trade Union Council, Hokubei Zago Shokodan, North American Reserve Officers Association, Hollywood Writers Mobilization for Defense, Idaho Pension Union, See Independent People's Party, Jefferson School of Social Sciences, New York City, Joseph Wiedemeyer School of Social Sciences, St. Louis, Missouri, Michigan School of Social Sciences, National Federation for Constitutional Liberties, Ohio School of Social Sciences, Philadelphia School of Social Sciences and Art, Samuel Adams School, Boston, Massachusetts, School of Jewish Studies, New York City, Tom Paine School of Social Sciences, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Tom Paine School of Westchester, New York, Walt Whitman School of Social Sciences, Newark, New Jersey. And then finally, we have a listing that has a James B. Lau, covert employee of the agency, overt status with the CIA, Army status overseas, U.S. Foreign Service, and Army civilian cover. So, the CIA heavily involved in the Marine Corps, recruiting in the Marine Corps, but not anybody of particular importance. Like if you're in intelligence, I'm sure they would not want you anywhere near what they're doing. And then using the Army for cover. Of course, I'm sure they use everybody for cover. And they use the entire contiguous United States and the people that live here for cover, and then blame us for all of the activities that they're up to. The so-called American imperialists. Thank you.